welcome to the second episode of We4 Talk. This time we're going to explore the topic of home. Home is a very personal experience, but also a concept that can be more in the public sphere, especially when borders start to shift, like what happened 25 years ago here in this region. And we've invited 4 guests this time round who have very personal and but overlapping stories about home and experiences. So we have Agape from Hungary, whose grandparents moved to Hungary from Greece, and you've traveled and lived abroad. We have Natalia from Poland, who is a global nomad and has made full use of the opportunities to travel and live abroad, both within Central Europe and beyond. We have Stano, who also has lived in several Visegrad 4 countries, next to his native Slovakia. And we have Duong, who grew up in the Czech Republic and is trying to break down stereotypes between different groups through writing. Welcome. Like last time round, we've invited you also to come and bring something to share with us, a gift which signifies the concept of home for you, something quite personal, but which can be shared.
I went abroad for the first time, and then it just didn't stop ever.
Addictive.
Yes, exactly. It's sort of addiction, but well, once you start traveling, you discover how important it is to you to overcome some boundaries you have and rethink yourself due to thanks to people you meet, context you put yourself in.
My childhood in Vietnam, it's a lot about my grandma. Because we had a really close relationship, so my childhood is actually separated in several phases as I moved with my parents to Czech Republic. So my Vietnamese part of identity is my years with my grandma, but also when I was in Czech Republic, the teenage years also shaped me some way because I lived in a parallel world. With a Vietnamese family, we spoke Vietnamese, we keep the Vietnamese traditions, but also at the same time I just speak Czech mostly and tried to blend in the Czech society. And at some point actually I almost forgot the Vietnamese language because I tried so hard to be one of the Czech normal kid, that I almost forgot my Vietnamese roots. But when I was 15, I think, there was a wake-up call for hometown, for blood. So it was a very also important time for my identity when I reopened my Vietnamese part. That I restarted learning Vietnamese, meeting new Vietnamese friends. And that's why I moved to France, to actually find myself, find a way how to cope with those parallel worlds, European and Asian. So I think thanks to years abroad, I figured out that actually the life on the bridge between those cultures is best.
I'm third generational Greek. It's not strong, so I wouldn't say I don't consider myself Greek, but it's a kind of plus. But it's unfortunately it's vanishing generation by generation. But of course we went to these folk dance circles, and I went to learn the language. And we visited family, and they came, so it was there, but it was not an everyday cultural contact.
Being from Skalica, my hometown, that's very strong. And now I thought about it, you basically grow up into becoming the local patriot because because there's the football team, there's the hockey team that you support, then anywhere you go, any event in the town there's always the the folklore group which has the name of Skalica in it, you know, so all that, and then you basically like grow up into becoming a local patriot. You know, you don't belong anywhere else. Like that, this is the place. This is the football team that you support. This is the hockey team that you support. And then there's the Roma part of my identity, which I think I don't know really. I will try a lot with my kids one day, but I think for most Roma in our region, it is the first impulse about your Romani ethnic identity that comes is negative. It would be someone shouting at you in the kindergarten that you are a dirty gypsy or something. You know, it's and only then you start to elaborate this and think about it more. You know, it's not that first you would start listening to Romani songs and only then get something negative. You know, so it's very often it's vice versa. The first impulse about ethnic identity is negative, and only then comes the positive.
I started blogging about banana children, which is the second generation like me, because we are Mongolian race, so yellow, but more white inside, like a lot of European influences. So I started blogging about our lives, what we are thinking about, our problems, that a lot of Vietnamese children, they would love to study, I don't know, art, music, architecture, something creative, but so-called not perspective for Vietnamese parents. They tend to have children study economics or medicine, something really
functional.
Yeah, practical.
Yeah, practical.
Yeah. So I think I'm really glad when I see the difference, the situation evolving and getting better. When I came back from France, that now we have a lot of programs and culture events where both community actually meet each other and talk, and the Czech people are curious about us, and we are more open, less shy.
It's funny you're mentioning the banana children. I've never heard it before, but then when you said like yellow on the outside and white inside, basically it's the same. We in Roma community have the coconuts.
Yeah, also.
Because basically it's like brown on the outside and white on the inside, and it's a bad word. It's like, you know, it's basically like there's a guy at Harvard, Roland G. Fryer, who does a lot of researching on this, basically on the acting white phenomenon, and how that excludes some people from the communities because the stereotypes of, you know, underperforming or anything are so internalized that you know, being a little different, studying arts or architecture is so different that now you're acting white, you know, now you are the banana or or something.
My concept of home is very small, and it's the identity card. And I think it reflects pretty well what home is for me and how the concept of home changed also because the borders of European Union has, in a way, vanished. So this is the thing, the token of traveling opportunities, of the fact that we're kind of at home in Europe anywhere, because all we need to move around is this little plastic thing. And this is the item that makes me makes it possible for me to settle in so many different places. A document that is accepted and valid in all European countries, meaning that somehow this sense of belonging has moved a little bit beyond the national borders in contemporary world, and this is something I also really like for many political, ideological reasons. I'm trying not to identify myself as a national of certain country, but more find ways and find concepts that would reflect more this fluid, nomadic lifestyle that I lead.
You need to feel part of the community in order to feel home, and it's very difficult if you don't speak the language.
It takes time.
Yes, I think language is very important, not only because of keeping contact with your own native tongue or community back at home, but to be able to express yourself, to make yourself understood as fluently. I mean, for me it's very important because I like to play with the creativity of a language. Of course, my native language is Hungarian, so I cannot do the same in French or English. So for me, the self-expression part of feeling at home is strictly connected to language.
I'm Vietnamese, and my mother tongue is actually Vietnamese, but my first language that I speak the best is Czech. So the linguistic side of or aspect of home is very different for me. When I speak Czech, it's absolutely, I don't have to control myself, or I feel totally like it's my mother tongue, it's my home. But when I'm in Vietnam, it's also home, but in a different way, because I need to find words, sometimes the terms. So I can also play with the creativity, but not with my mother tongue.
Really?
Yeah.
It's quite ironic that I can hear, being a Slovak and growing up very, very close to the Czech border, I can hear Czech accent in your English.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Because when I speak French, I have Asian accent. I've been told. Yes. So I'm mixing all the languages, and I don't even know.
English is the first language I use everywhere I go. Also because I don't meet that many Polish people whenever I go. I mostly work with international groups. Then the choice of works that I do is of course determined a little bit by the fact that it has to be something that will be available to me even though I don't speak the language. So when I worked in Slovenia, it had to be an international environment. When I worked in Italy, same case, France, and so on and so forth. Well, English became for me a little bit this language that makes me feel at home everywhere as well, even though I don't have the proficiency of a native speaker. It's okay enough to make home whenever you go. And then people who you meet while traveling, are mostly the people for whom this is the communication tool as well. So that's quite important.
How was that when you came to France? Did you speak French when you went? Or?
Yeah, I took some classes at high school, but of course I didn't understand anything during the courses. Actually, I took my notes phonetically, so it was really difficult. I was in Sciences Po, so there were a lot of students, very international students, and all of them were abroad or heading abroad. So they all speak English. But what I felt, or what I was disappointed about, is that they were quite tired of all foreigners and Erasmus students, so they didn't want to meet us anymore, or there were no desire to meet new foreigners, because for them it was like every year the same, to meet new friends, meet new people. So for me, I was actually in a group of Erasmus students. I wasn't first year during Erasmus. I was not integrated in French society as much. Maybe because I was Erasmus, because as an Erasmus student, maybe you have experienced too. You spend most of time with Erasmus because those are people having time for parties and hanging out. and and of course, when my French was better, the second year, yes, that at that moment, when I could express myself really fluently, they accepted me more, the local people.
Being a member of Roma minority back home in Slovakia, whenever I travel anywhere else, it doesn't add to my minority perception. You know, like maybe being ethnic white Slovak living in Slovakia and then traveling somewhere abroad and starting to live there, then a person feels like, oh, I'm a minority now. You know, I should integrate or something. And I don't have that feeling because I know that, you know, like, well, wherever I go, I will always be the minority. So, you know, in many parts of the world, the visible minority, you know, like it's quite strange from the perspective of like being integrated or not.
Speaking about home, first thing came to my mind was recipe of my most favorite Vietnamese food. It's nem, the fried spring rolls. And this is what I make every time I'm abroad or I'm homesick. This is what I make for my friends, colleagues, everybody.
Unfortunately, we're not friends yet, right? Otherwise, you would bring that.
Maybe next time. Yeah, I wanted to bring it, but actually with the train would be this, not delicious. But this is what I share, like part of my home with other people, with all my friends. And when I eat, this is actually the first thing that my mom taught me when I started cooking. And when I make it or eat it, it just it brings memories back for good times with family in Vietnam, but also with everybody that I have worldwide.
I think it's the shared experience. I was born in the 80s, and it's a generational thing that we share the same cartoons, the same stories. We remember the same, for example, early 90s, the same political figures. Even there are like Facebook groups about it. And so it's very generational, and it defines or it narrows down. So it's more this national and language based. So it has more or less clear boundaries. There is today's generations where it's spread through the internet and thanks to the internet. That's one thing. And what was my childhood home is pretty much the flat, I think, where I grew up, and the neighborhood and the schools, or especially the elementary schools, so the routes and the streets I went to. So it's it was my area.
I brought a very interesting thing, and it's the key, very normal key, and it's one of the keys I need to get into my apartment, the place where I live now, and somehow I like it. It just, you know, it's where I have all my stuff, but it's not the key to my home. You know, the key to my home no longer works. Actually, it's a key. I remember the shape exactly, and it's the first key I had to the place where I grew up. You know, that's the key to home. My mom, who lives in that flat, she changed the door, changed the locks since then, you know. But I still can visualize the first key, and I think I will never forget it. I can remember exactly how it was shaped. I could possibly draw it, and I think this key to me resembles how it's not really material. It's not the. You know, I'm not talking about the flight. I have the keys to my mom's flight too, but that's not the key. You know, that's not it. It's the old key, the one that I was actually wearing. Is the key that I was wearing on the lace, you know, during the summer.
Nomadic person needs a home, needs a base at least, so I have it at my parents' place, but at the same time, because they moved there when I was already adult and started living somewhere else on my own, it's not exactly the place that I'm super connected with. So I know that I'm at home there in a way, but it's not this kind of home that, it was before.
If I ask my mom how she feels about the nomadic groups, I think she would say, "Oh yeah, it's very nice. It's interesting. Not for me. I wanna stay here." You know? So and then, you know, in Belgium there are very interesting groups who live in big houses, but the houses are built on the basically on the tracks, on the wheels. And then you ask them like, "Hey, but how do you want to move this on the road?" "No, I will never move it." "So why do you build it on the wheels?" "Well, because it's just a tradition. It needs to be like that." You know? So you have a huge house and it has wheels, but they will never move it. But it's there.
In case of nomadic lifestyle, I think the concept of home basically changes a lot. So it's a very internal thing. It's something that you bring with you, or it's very easy in a way to replicate wherever you are. I think it's also easier in Europe, which is so homogeneous in a way. So for Europeans, moving around Europe is actually not such a big thing. Probably going to USA or Western countries it's not a big challenge. It's setting your home. If you speak some basic English, you can easily have home whenever you'd like to. So the concept of home becomes, you know, just this ability to find your flat, find your house, then buy a bike and learn how to move around the city, and you're basically at home. You know where to do your shopping, you find friends, which is super easy as well because you have internet, you have all these communities, you have meetups, so you look for people with certain interests and so on. So it's very difficult actually to feel lonely.
Well, for me, to feel home is quite difficult because for me it's not just about moving somewhere to find an apartment, to be able to pay the rent, or to get internet connection. For me, as home is quite a notion, or it's something that I must feel in my stomach. So it takes a lot of time to feel home somewhere.
A lot of spring rolls.
Yes, exactly.
In Eastern Austria, a lot of the people who take care of the elderly are actually commuting from the Czech Republic, from Hungary and from Slovakia, and they live in their home country and then commute over for the day or for a week or so and then go back. And sometimes their commute is shorter than somebody living in Greater Paris or Greater London travels every day within the same country. So I think the kind of flowing around is of people within the European Union and within the closer region here in Central and Eastern Europe is something that is becoming more and more commonplace. But I also think that at the moment, I think there's probably two groups at the top of the societal and educational spectrum and at the bottom who are most mobile. It's like the global cosmopolitan elite on the one hand. You have job opportunities and you kind of cosmopolitan nomads and you go from one place to the next. Or people who have the highest economic pressures and go after job opportunities somewhere else. And I think it will take still some time until it becomes common for everybody to move around more.
For example, in the Middle Ages, it was so natural, you know, to travel and to try your luck and to learn in the system, in the specific working system that you had to you know, step on the ladder, on the professional ladder, and to learn from masters, and that meant that you have to leave your own country and to experience new things, and it's coming back.
My experience when I was conducting my research on Slovak and Czech Roma who migrated to the UK, and there were two groups. There was one group which left Slovakia and Czech Republic after Slovakia joined the EU, and then there was one group who left earlier, and those were the asylum seekers. And these, they very often said they wouldn't go back to Slovakia, they wouldn't go back to Czech Republic, because in their mindset they left the country and they applied for asylum.
So they left to leave.
Yeah, because they felt like it's unbearable here. Those who are leaving now leave mostly for economic reasons. The situation, I think, the level of racism hasn't changed much, but their
mindset is different.
Mindset is like, we are leaving because it's easier to find a job there. And the very interesting fact was that very often those who were the asylum seekers, still they would say, I wouldn't go back home again. They said, I wouldn't go back home. I'm not returning, but still they would say home. I wouldn't go back home.
I've been in France for 3.5 years. So I see the difference between Vietnamese community in France and in Czech Republic. There are several facts or several reasons for that, because as you said, the Vietnamese community came to France after the colonization, the end of French colony, after 1954. On the other hand, the Vietnamese community in Czech Republic came in 70s, 80s. So the current community in Czech Republic is quite young in comparison with the French one. So, and also the political reasons in France made them to make home more spontaneously. They adopted most of French customs, or even some families, they just speak French since the birth, because the main point is to really integrate to the society. They share the values, the European values. But the Czech community, the Vietnamese community in Czech Republic, they try to keep the traditions. They came for work, more like for professional reasons, the generation of our parents, not for political alignment or values like this. So they brought the Vietnamese traditions and customs and lifestyle, actually, and they tried to put it in Czech environment. So the generation of my generation, the second generation here in Czech Republic, we are the first generation who are really integrated, who speak Czech languages, who have friends. So this is the big difference I see.
I choose this book, which is a Hungarian, from a Hungarian author. It's called Californian Fur, so this bird, quail, Californian quail, and it's a very thick book. And it's about, so it's a trilogy, it's about a family. At the turn of the century, 19th to 20th, because of economic and financial poverty, they tried their luck first in Ohio and in California. And
Hungarian family, which immigrated to the US.
Yes. And a lot of, for example, my great-grandfathers, my Hungarian great-grandfathers, went to the States, but he came back. And we were talking about it, whether you end up staying, so you go up to try your luck, because they were supposed to go to collect enough money to be able to go home and buy property. But they had their family there, so they stayed. And my Greek grandparents also went, well, they had to flee because of political reasons, but they came for who knows how long time. But when they could go home, they didn't, because by that time they had property and more or less better jobs. Whereas, for example, my Greek grandmother's brother went back because he just didn't feel at home. He was not satisfied with his job. So when he could, he repatriated with his family.
8 years ago, we were really, really close. I wouldn't say ghetto, but a community was not open towards Czech people. They barely know about our customs, traditions. They didn't understand why we behave this way, why, because communication is core, and we didn't have that communication. So there were a lot of misunderstanding that leads to also discrimination or a lot of misunderstanding. So as a second generation who speak Czech, but also Vietnamese, I saw an opportunity to actually open up and connect both communities, because I saw that it would be more, the life would be just richer. And also I started blogging not only for the Czech community, but also to the first generation of Vietnamese. Because as long as I have a great and close relationship to my parents, there were some just stuff that we didn't talk about the pressure you have when you have to take exams, to be good at school, and maybe also your love life. 8 years ago, I remember most of my friends had, for example, Czech boyfriends, but they didn't talk about him. They hide.
They didn't dare to tell their parents that they would have...
They were so afraid. First, he was not Vietnamese. And secondly, they were still at school. And for some Vietnamese parents, for some strict Vietnamese parents, it's quite a deal. Yeah. So we are very educationally orientated.
When it comes into mixed families or like immigrants, whatever families, a lot of things changes from generation to generation. My mother was born in Hungary, and I know she wanted to be the best in her class, not to be referred as the Greek. So she was a very hardworking someone. But unfortunately she didn't speak Greek, so I'm not bilingual. But I think all this bilingualism is emerged more in the 90s, and nowadays they think it's something that should be really highlighted. So unfortunately, I couldn't really leave as a heritage the Greek language. Of course, I could learn it, but it wouldn't be like as natural as probably for you, and I wouldn't feel obliged probably as you would feel. So it's an interesting and dangerous thing as well. I mean, to keep your identity, but it's not really my identity. How I should keep, because in the 80s it wasn't in the air, or my mother, so it wasn't that present as be proud that you are, of course, at a certain extent, but it wasn't a dominant feature in our life.
Maybe if someone offered me like, hey, if you give up your ethnicity and never anywhere say that you are Roma, we will treat you in a normal way, then maybe as a child I would give this part of my identity up. But now it's different, you know. Because like many people try to assimilate as much as possible. My parents didn't speak the language, didn't speak Romani with us, because they just didn't think it contributes to anything. It wasn't that they would like prohibit us from using the language, but it doesn't contribute to anything. It's just better, and you know. And then I learned the language at the university, And now when I talk to some Roma, they're like, hey, but I remember you didn't speak the language. Like, yeah, I learned at the university. What? Is it possible to study Romani at the university? And that's again like part of the like being proud. Is that, well, we have a language that's not just, you know, gibberish that we made up recently or something, but it has a history and it's developed, and you can study it at the university.
I would love to teach my children Vietnamese language, because I think this is the basics when you want to understand any culture. So the language, then some moral aspects that I've learned from my parents, like, you know, close family relationships, fidelity, some patriotism, also being proud of yourself, of your nation, to keep to remind history of Vietnamese war. And for the Czech part, I think the sense of humor that totally described me and my fiancé. Yeah, I love the sarcasm of Czech people. So. But I will leave children to choose themselves in the mean of politics or religion.
Maybe most importantly, what I will definitely make sure I do with my kids is that they don't have to choose. They can. It's not either or, you know, which no one told me, and I think it's somehow important. Like some people say, like, I'm half Roma, half Greek, half whatever. You're not half. You're both Greek and Hungarian and Vietnamese and Czech. You don't have to be like half Czech, half Hungarian or whatever. You know, like no one really needs to do that. And I think this is somehow lacking in the general discourse. Like people say, like, I'm 1/4 Jewish or something. You're not 1/4, you're Jewish. Just forget about splitting yourself.